I never thought a simple "ma'am" could feel like a mistake until tonight. The office was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every small sound, a chair scraping, the hum of the air conditioner, feel amplified. And there she was, Miss Langford, mid-40s, graceful, impossibly poised, yet somehow carrying a vulnerability that made her human, irresistible. My eyes traced the curve of her neck as she leaned over a stack of papers, the soft glow of the desk lamp catching the strands of her hair. I called her "ma'am," out of habit, out of professionalism, but the word felt wrong now. I tried to focus on my own work, but it was impossible. Her presence was magnetic, pulling at some part of me I didn't know I had. The warmth of her hand brushed mine as she passed a folder, just for a moment, and I felt a charge run through me. She didn't pull away. Instead, she let it linger, as if testing boundaries I hadn't realized existed. "Still here?" Her voice was low, confident, and somehow intimate all at once. "I had some work to finish," I replied, aware of how unsteady I sounded. My words felt small, inadequate, but I couldn't seem to stop looking at her. She tilted her head, and the faintest smile touched her lips. Not enough to show amusement fully, but enough to make me tense, aware of every breath I took. I realized I was holding my own. The air between us thickened, charged with something unspoken, something neither of us dared name. There was a moment of silence, the kind that presses against your chest, heavy and expectant. I noticed the faint scent of her perfume, soft and lingering, a warmth that clung to the edges of the room. The way she shifted in her chair, the subtle arch of her back, the careful way she adjusted her sleeve, it all felt deliberate, magnetic, intoxicating. I swallowed, trying to remind myself to breathe, to stay professional, but every small gesture of hers pulled my attention away. The brush of her fingers against her own notebook, the way her eyes caught the lamp's light, the soft exhales she couldn't quite hide, each detail seemed to stretch time, make the air between us smaller, denser. "I called you ma'am," I admitted finally, the words coming out before I could stop them. "Out of habit." Her smile deepened, just slightly, and she leaned closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper, soft but deliberate, like a private invitation. "Say my name, like you mean it." The words wrapped around me, slow and deliberate, carrying something I wasn't ready to name. My chest tightened, my pulse quickened, and the world outside her gaze ceased to exist. Every instinct in me wanted to obey, wanted to speak her name like it carried weight, like it mattered. Then came the sudden creak of the office door, a sound that shattered the fragile bubble we'd created. Footsteps approached, deliberate, unrelenting, and her eyes flicked toward the interruption. Just for a moment, but it was enough. That moment held all the tension, all the unsaid words, all the longing we hadn't admitted. And I knew, with a certainty that made my chest ache, that nothing tonight would ever be the same. The hum of the office still lingered in my ears as I stepped into the hallway, trying to shake the moment from my mind. But every step reminded me of her, the tilt of her head, the weight behind her whisper, the way her eyes held mine longer than propriety allowed. I wasn't supposed to think about her like that. Not a woman older than me, confident, composed, untouchable. Yet I couldn't stop. She had always carried herself with that quiet authority, the kind that made people respect her immediately. But tonight there was something different. Vulnerability, maybe. Or perhaps it was the way her shoulders stiffened when she thought no one was watching, or the brief pause before she smiled, a hesitation I had never noticed before. And somehow, it made her irresistible. I remembered a conversation she had once had with a colleague, the faint traces of loneliness behind her laugh, the subtle regret in her voice when she mentioned a life that didn't go exactly as planned. My own experiences weren't so different, uncertain beginnings, the quiet ache of longing, the moments I spent watching life pass by, thinking someone else was living it more fully than I was. I caught her again near the window, looking out at the city lights, her hand resting lightly on the sill. She hadn't noticed me yet. The soft light made her skin glow. It highlighted the curve of her neck, the slight tilt of her shoulder. I swallowed hard, aware that my chest was betraying me with each shallow breath. "I didn't hear you come in," she said softly, and I jumped slightly, caught off guard. Her presence was immediate, pressing into the space around me, yet carefully measured. I wanted to step closer, wanted to reach for her hand, but I stayed rooted in place. Just stretching my legs, I murmured, aware of how weak it sounded. Her lips quirked into the faintest smile, and she leaned just slightly toward me, as if testing the distance. I felt the warmth of her breath brush against my cheek, and I had to resist the urge to close the gap. Her hand hovered near mine for a heartbeat, brushing against nothing, yet sending a jolt through me. "You've been working late a lot," she said, her tone casual, but there was an edge of curiosity in her eyes. I tried to focus on her words, but all I could see was the slow rise and fall of her chest, the gentle curve of her wrist, the subtle way her hair fell forward as she tilted her head. I just like getting things done," I said, forcing a smile I didn't feel. Her gaze lingered on mine, unflinching, as if she could read every thought I was trying to hide. And then, without warning, her hand brushed against my shoulder, brief, almost accidental, yet deliberate enough to make me catch my breath. We stood there like that, the air thick with something unspoken, and for a moment, nothing else in the world existed. No office, no rules, no hesitation. Just her, just me, and the quiet electricity sparking between us. Then she stepped back slightly, letting the moment hang in the air, fragile, charged, waiting. And I realized, with a mixture of fear and longing, that we had just crossed a line neither of us could take back. The office felt smaller that night, every shadow and whisper magnified. I was standing closer to her than I should have been, drawn by gravity I didn't understand. She leaned over a pile of papers, her shoulder brushing mine just long enough to send shivers through my spine. The hum of the air conditioner, the soft tap of rain against the window, it all faded around us. "I didn't expect you to stay this late again," she murmured, her voice low, deliberate. My heart skipped a beat. Yeah?" I stammered, trying to focus on the folder in my hands. My fingers trembled slightly, and I knew she noticed. I caught her glance, quick, searching, unreadable, and I felt exposed in a way I didn't want to admit. Her hand moved just a little closer, brushing against mine on the desk. It lingered, not enough to cross a line, but enough to make my pulse hammer. The warmth of her skin, the subtle pressure of her fingers, the quiet nearness, it was dangerous, intoxicating. Then the phone rang. My head jerked toward the sound, startled, and I realized with a jolt that someone could walk in at any moment. My chest tightened. The thought of being caught in this suspended intimacy made my stomach twist with a mix of excitement and dread. I tried to speak, to fill the silence, but the words felt absurd. We should probably. She cut me off with a soft laugh, almost a whisper, leaning just enough that our faces were inches apart. I could see the faint flicker of hesitation in her eyes, the tiny part of her that wanted to reach, to close the space between us. I wanted the same. I wanted to lean in, to feel the brush of her lips, but restraint held me back, and her. A pause. Heartbeats loud in my ears. A shared breath, stolen, unsteady. My hand itched to reach toward her hair, her face, anything, but I remained frozen. She did the same, the tension electric, stretching seconds into eternities. "I shouldn't," she began, but didn't finish. Instead, she leaned closer, letting her hand hover near mine again. The nearness made me dizzy, aware of everything, the warmth of her body, the softness of her breath against my cheek, the way her perfume wrapped around me like a secret. "I know," I whispered, barely audible. My voice was rough, betraying the desire I refused to name. For a moment, the world shrank until it was just us, close, dangerously close, suspended between what was appropriate and what we wanted. Every glance, every micro-movement carried weight. Every silent heartbeat throbbed with possibility. Then a shadow fell across the doorway, just for a second, and we both jumped back slightly, our bodies separating even as our hands lingered near each other. The brush of her fingers against mine felt like an unspoken promise, a pull I couldn't deny. Even as we tried to resist, Even as guilt and hesitation whispered warnings, we were closer than ever. Close enough to feel it. Close enough that neither of us wanted to pull away. Close enough that the tension, electric and undeniable, would linger long after the office lights went out. I couldn't breathe. Not really. Every rational thought had been swallowed by the pull of her nearness. She stood across from me, the glow of the desk lamp casting shadows across her face, highlighting the curve of her jaw, the soft line of her neck. My hand itched to reach for her, to brush the hair that had fallen across her temple, to feel the warmth of her cheek against my palm. I can't keep doing this, I whispered, though my voice trembled, betraying the desire I tried so hard to hide. Her lips parted slightly, a faint inhale escaping her, and she didn't move away. Instead, she tilted her head toward me, eyes wide, vulnerable yet daring. I could see it, the part of her that wanted this just as badly as I did but was terrified of letting go. I know, she said softly, voice low, almost a murmur, carrying the weight of things unsaid. I shouldn't, but I can't stop thinking about you either. The words hit me like a physical force. Every pulse in my body tightened. She was closer now, the scent of her perfume enveloping me, the warmth of her presence pressing gently against mine. I wanted to lean in, to close the last inch, but hesitation held me frozen, and yet every instinct screamed forward. Her hand lifted slowly, almost shyly, brushing against my chest, tracing a line that made my stomach knot. I swallowed, my lips dry, heart hammering like a drum. She leaned just slightly, letting her shoulder brush mine, and the friction sent a jolt of awareness straight through me. I was caught willingly, helplessly. I shouldn't want this, I murmured, my voice lower now, closer to a growl than words. It's wrong. Wrong? She breathed, and in that moment, the tension between us became unbearable. Her fingers traced my collarbone, light and deliberate, as if daring me to resist. Tell me what's wrong. Tell me why. I stepped closer, feeling the heat radiate from her, the small tremble in her hands, the rapid rise and fall of her chest. Every micro-movement, every tiny breath, seemed magnified in the space between us. I wanted to confess, to tell her everything I felt, every stolen thought, every longing, every quiet night spent thinking of her. Before I could speak, her lips were near my ear, her voice a whisper that brushed my skin. Say my name. She breathed. Like you mean it. Time froze. My pulse drummed in my ears, my hands itched to reach for her face, to feel the warmth of her lips, to bridge the impossible distance. Her eyes locked with mine, pleading, daring, and I knew one movement, one surrender, and everything would change. But the world didn't wait for us. The faint creak of the hallway floor sounded like a gunshot, and we both froze, bodies nearly touching, breaths caught in our throats. The moment hung there, fragile and infinite, teetering on the edge between surrender and restraint, desire and consequence. And yet, even with the interruption, even with the unspoken rules pressing down on us, I couldn't pull away. Neither could she. We were too close. Too aware. Too ready. The quiet hum of the office had been replaced by something sharper, heavier. She was standing by the window, back to me, the city lights flickering across her silhouette. I could see the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hands as she clutched the edge of the desk. Something had changed. I need to tell you something, she said finally, her voice low, almost brittle. My stomach twisted. Her hands brushed against the papers as if grounding herself, but I could feel the tremor ripple through her entire body. I stepped closer, but she didn't turn. What is it? I asked, my own voice quiet, unsure. Even the distance between us felt electric. Her hand reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and for a moment, I wanted to close the gap, to hold her there and tell her it would be okay. But restraint pulled me back, and so did fear. It's not what you think, she murmured, finally turning to me. Her eyes met mine, wide and raw, holding something I couldn't quite read. Someone knows. Someone overheard about us. My chest tightened. The world seemed to tilt, and yet, I was drawn irresistibly closer to her. The fear, the taboo, the thrill, it wrapped around us like a coil I couldn't escape. I swallowed hard, aware of every pulse in my body, every inch separating us. Who? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. The answer could destroy everything, but I had to hear it. She stepped slightly closer, her shoulder brushing mine just barely, and I felt the heat of her presence, the magnetic pull of her body against mine. It doesn't matter who. What matters is that we can't pretend this isn't happening anymore. My hands itched to reach for her, to steady her, to touch her in ways that were entirely too dangerous. She noticed I could see it, the way her eyes flicked to my hands, the faint catch in her breath. And then, almost without thinking, our fingers brushed. A spark. A jolt. Small, intimate, and devastating all at once. I stepped back reflexively, though my heart protested, and she mirrored me, stepping just enough to create space yet not enough to break the tension. The room felt impossibly small, charged with unspoken desire and fear. I shouldn't feel like this, I said, voice tight, raw. But I can't stop thinking about you. Her lips curved in a faint, wry smile, the kind that held both amusement and confession. Neither can I, she admitted. Her hand hovered near mine, brushing against my wrist in a delicate, teasing way. The contact was fleeting, but it left a trail of fire in its wake. For a moment, we simply stood there, the weight of revelation pressing down, the forbidden attraction wrapping tighter around us. The fear, the desire, the unspoken promise, it was all there, tangible, almost unbearable. Then she took a slow, deliberate step closer, her breath warm against my cheek, her gaze daring me to move, to decide, to finally surrender to the inevitable pull between us. I knew, in that heartbeat, that nothing could stay the same. The next choice, mine, hers, or both, would change everything. The office was quiet again, but it wasn't the same. The tension between us had shifted, heavier, denser, impossible to ignore. We stood just inches apart, her shoulder brushing mine, the faint warmth of her body pressing against me through the thin space between. Every heartbeat sounded loud in my ears, every shallow breath tangled with hers. I can't keep pretending, I whispered, my voice low, raw. Not with you. Not like this. Her lips parted slightly, her eyes dark and searching, holding mine like she was trying to memorize every flicker of my expression. Then don't, she murmured, and the sound was a spark, igniting something in my chest I couldn't contain. I reached for her, hesitating only for a heartbeat before brushing the hair from her face. My fingers lingered, tracing the line of her cheek, feeling the soft warmth of her skin. She leaned into the touch, and it was enough to send a shiver down my spine. You're sure? She asked softly, though I could feel the tremor in her hands, the quickening of her pulse beneath my palm. Her voice was a whisper, but it carried weight, intention, danger, everything that made this impossible, and yet inevitable. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, I admitted, letting my hands find the small of her back. The contact was brief, electric, tethering us together even as fear whispered we shouldn't. She closed her eyes for a moment, exhaling slowly, leaning against me, letting her presence fill the space around us. The scent of her perfume, the warmth radiating from her skin, the way her hair fell across her shoulder, it all made my head spin. I could feel her heartbeat against mine, irregular, fast, a mirror of my own. I don't want to stop, she whispered, voice catching, full of need and caution, desire and hesitation all at once. Then we won't, I said, my lips brushing the shell of her ear, words soft but deliberate. Every inch of me wanted her closer, wanted to erase the space that had kept us apart for too long. She tilted her head, searching my eyes, and I saw it there, the surrender, the relief, the confession that had been locked away behind composure and hesitation. Slowly, inevitably, our foreheads touched, then our breaths mingled, and the air between us seemed to thrum with the inevitability of what was to come. No words were necessary. Everything we'd felt, the fear, the longing, the stolen glances, the near misses, had led to this. And in that quiet, suspended moment, we understood each other fully, utterly, without pretense. I could feel her hand in mine, tight, grounding, as though we were tethered to the world and to each other all at once. The choice had been made. The risk had been accepted. And for the first time, standing so impossibly close, I knew that nothing, not hesitation, not judgment, not fear, could pull us apart. The office was empty now, the hum of the lights softened, the night settling around us like a gentle blanket. For the first time since this all began, there was no hesitation, no unspoken fear, no stolen glances. Only us. She leaned against me, forehead resting against mine, and I felt the slow, steady rise and fall of her chest. My hand found hers, fingers intertwining naturally, as if they had always belonged there. The warmth of her skin, the subtle weight of her presence, it grounded me in a way nothing else ever had. I was scared, she admitted quietly, her voice low, intimate. Of what people would think. Of what this, us, could mean. I tightened my hold on her hand, brushing my thumb across hers. I was too. But none of that matters now. Not if we're here together. She let out a soft laugh, half relief, half disbelief, and pressed a gentle kiss to my temple. It was slow, deliberate, grounding. I could feel the tension of the past weeks, the near misses, the secret longing, melting away under the simple act of closeness. We moved to the small couch by the window, sitting side by side, knees brushing, shoulders touching. The city lights spilled across the room, reflecting in her eyes, and I realized I'd never felt more at home than I did in this shared silence, this quiet intimacy. Her hand rose to my face, tracing my jawline lightly, and I leaned into the touch. It's strange, she whispered. How quickly everything can change. How right this feels after all the hesitation. I smiled, pressing my forehead to hers. It doesn't feel strange to me. It feels real. And I don't want to go back to pretending it isn't. She nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips, and for a moment we simply existed in that space, together, aware of each other, safe in the truth of what we'd found. Her fingers threaded through mine again, a silent promise that neither distance nor doubt could undo. The age gap, the fear of judgment, the quiet hesitation of days past, none of it mattered here. Only the warmth, the trust, the quiet strength of holding each other close. I leaned down and brushed my lips across her forehead, softly, reverently. We're here now, I murmured. Yes, she breathed, tilting her head so our foreheads rested together. And I don't want to go anywhere. We stayed like that for a long while, wrapped in each other's presence, letting the quiet night settle around us. No words were necessary, everything had been said in glances, touches, and the steady rhythm of two hearts finally in sync. And as the first faint light of dawn crept through the window, I knew we had found something rare, something real, something worth holding on to. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?